Hey, welcome everybody. This is John Paul Mendoza, the Raging Verbalist, also known as Dr. Speed Selling. And you're here for Raging Verbalist number 44. Whoever said we weren't going to get that way? For those of you who are crap players, two fours is a hard eight. A hard eight is worth more money, of course. But just think of it as Raging Verbalist number 44. Just having a little bit of fun. As always, or hopefully always, with me is the lovely Sandra, who will ask the questions, ponder the thoughts, and keep us moving. So, Sandra, welcome to Raging Verbalist.
Hello, hello. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, other than, internet connection is a little unstable, a little like me. Okay. So, all right. So for those who don't know, Raging Verbalist happens on a Friday, goes on Facebook Live. We also put it up on YouTube. There's a YouTube channel. That means if you like what I have to say, give me a wonderful comment. If you don't, well, what are you watching it for, huh? Also, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the little bell so annoyingly it tells you every time I come on. I started doing that when I first got into that whole YouTube thing. And, after about 144 of these things that I attached to, I said, I better start not subscribing, but unnotifying. So anyway, I'm sure that people who are professionals would say, John, don't ever tell them not to do that. But yeah, subscribe and you'll get more of these. All right. So Raging Verbalist, I talk about a variety of different topics. And today we're going to be talking about time and one of my favorite topics, and time zones and what's going on with that. So, Sandra, what is the first thing we are going to talk about? Put it on the table. And we are dead in the water.
I hear you laughing, but I don't see you doing anything. It's just frozen.
I think we are dead in the water.
There we go. Now I see you again. Now you're moving. I said in my text, I hope I didn't jinx us. I don't know. And somebody's out there at the little voodoo doll. Screw these guys. It's like, get in it.
All right. So for any of you out there who've gone this far, this is going to be a bonus Raging Verbalist. This is going to be Raging Verbalist 44 minus 1. And an eighth of one. I mean, this is like, so we're going to post this anyway. So here's the lesson. We're going totally off script. Here's the lesson. Never work with animal, children, or technology. And this is an example of technology. And I don't know how far we're going to make it. It keeps freezing up because, Sandra, I have a portrait of Sandra instead of a moving picture of her. And of course, all of her thing now says her bandwidth is low. She needs her vitamins. Maybe didn't have her Wheaties or something. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, which we now have a few minutes of this, and this is Raging Verbalist. Maybe it's 44 minus 1/8, and this is called Murphy kicking our ass. So this is Murphy kicking our ass. So if you're expecting something else, this is Murphy kicking our ass. And if you don't know what Murphy's Law is that anything that can go wrong will go wrong at the worst possible time. What in the world? It's like, you pick up the pen, it's been sitting there, it's been waiting, right? You start humming to yourself, put me in, coach, I'm ready to write. You pick up the pen, you start to write, and it doesn't write. You take the pen off of that sheet of paper, you got a piece of scratch paper, you scribble it back and forth, it's writing perfectly. You go back to the other tablet, that fancy paper, not something else, and it doesn't write. I know this has never happened to you. Well, Zoom meetings do the same thing. So all I can tell you is that here it goes. Murphy rides for free, always rides for free, and Murphy will and is now kicking our asses because it is doing crazy stuff. And if you're still out there and you can still hear me, All I can say is pray to the internet gods that this is actually working. So what do we learn from this? Number one is that Murphy is at any moment in time waiting for you. Unsuspectingly, you're riding along, you're whistling a happy tune, everything is going pretty good, and then gazzato, away you go. Tell you a quick story. Working for Mercury Computer Systems, we fly in for a very important meeting in DC. There's 3 of us. We were all on the same flight. We land in DC. My boss's luggage, Big Joe's luggage, shows up. Ba-bing! Few more bags come off. Here comes my bag. Barry, who is there with us, always a good guy, is waiting and no bag. And after about 15 minutes, of course, there are no bags coming. There are no more bags coming. And he says to the guy, hey, what do I have to do? And the guy says, you have to fill out this form. Now, we have an early morning meeting. This is at a time when it was very much, you should be wearing nice clothes, not like today, which is, flip-flops, Hawaiian shirt, and gym shorts or something. And, of course, he's like, well, what am I going to do? And I said, well, we're going to the hotel, buddy. So if you want to come with us, you might as well come with us. And, of course, he fills out the form. He is out of sorts. So we have to figure out how to buck him up because he's going to be presenting the next day. So I get up the next day and I explain to the audience the maladies of putting luggage through on a flight. That my luggage showed up, Joe's luggage showed up, Barry's luggage is lost in space. Now, Barry felt better, but I said, listen, you have to tell people up front. You can't just sit there and, walk up because essentially he says, John, what do I do? And I said, well, you can always, wash out your delicates, if you will. I don't think guys actually have delicates, but, put a cap of shampoo and wash them out and rinse them out and dry them in the shower and your sakis and all that stuff. And we had a very good meeting. So we get done. And of course, one day is gone and he's sitting there. And now every time we have a break, because he's now become obsessed with this, he runs over and dials the 800 number to find out where his luggage was. Now, this is at a time when we did not have barcode and all this good scanner stuff we have today because see, with barcodes, they can tell you that, no, your luggage went to Portland instead of going to Washington, D.C. But in those days, they are basically saying, shit, we don't know where it is. If we knew, we'd have it. We'd have it. Well, another day goes by, and he doesn't get a luggage, and he's getting a little bit crazy. And now it's time for us to all leave D.C., but he actually has to go home, which is in Boston, and we're going to the West Coast. And he gets to the airport extra early. He leaves us be because he's got to go there, and he's has his cry. He's bought a crying towel or something, and he tells the woman at the counter his tale of woe, tale of story, and he has to explain to them that the form that he has dutifully filled out, which was a 5-part form, imagine that, because they didn't have 5-part form, that he has to change the address of where the luggage has to go to, because the luggage has to now go to Boston, which is where he lived, still does, I think, versus going to D.C. because he was leaving D.C. And the guy had to explain that now that this 5-part form was taken apart and sent all over the place, that there was really no way that they could just reroute the luggage somewhere else, like Boston, because first it would have to get to D.C., and then we would then have to deal with it there. But because, well, you don't have the luggage, you can't check the luggage, we're going to charge you a fee, which he just lost his shit. And of course, we show up at the airport, and we had to go by and see him, and he is rather depressed, tells us the story. And I said, welcome to the road. Welcome to traveling. Now, this is the joys of Murphy, because of course, while he was sitting there waiting for his flight, and we sat there for a little bit with him, we got into a little prayer circle. Not really. I was just like going, come on, buck up. And while we were there, of course, he makes one last call. And he finds out that the luggage is now arriving in DC. And I said, then you have to change your flight. And he goes, ba, 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 ba. So that was Murphy kicking his ass. And today Murphy's kicking mine. And of course, I don't want to say that about Sandra because I want to be delicate. So some of you said, yeah. So anyway, Sandra, why don't you share a story of your many travels of where Murphy has had fun with you? And by the way, if you've all read about what this was going to be about, yeah, that's going to be next week because this one is about Murphy. Okay, so what befell you? Because Sandra at a young age left home to seek fame and fortune, and I'm sure that you had fun traveling. So give us a travel story. Give us a fun.
Oh gosh, let's see. Well, luggage. I've definitely lost my luggage before, gone, and then lo and behold, I don't know if it ever even left the airport that I departed from. So that was fantastic. All the family Christmas presents and my clothes for a whole couple of weeks. They've also broken the wheels off of a couple of my suitcases, so I just drag it along. But I think when it was my first trip out to New York, actually, they ended up not being able to land in LaGuardia, of course. And so we ended up being in the air an extra, I think, 4 hours just like circling around. It was terrible. And then I was an unaccompanied minor at the time because I was going to go scope out things and, where I lived. And so they had to get me a chaperone. And so she was, of course, from out of town and had no clue where she was going. So after this much delayed flight, trying to remember now, I land. There's like no one there to get me. She finally shows up. I think it's like 1 a.m. And then she was driving around lost, didn't call for help. I'm like this 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid, like, what's going on? And we're driving around in like the worst neighborhoods for 4 hours. For 4 hours. This chaperone, like, I don't know what she was thinking. Stopping in bad neighborhoods, like people with baseball bats, like looking at us, like, what are you people doing at this gas station at 3 a.m? And then we finally get to the destination at like 4 a.m. And I just sleep on the floor at that point because I'm like, whatever, I don't care. I've made it here. This crazy person, I think I didn't see her again after that. So I'm thinking they let her go and she didn't come with us. So then I was up 2 hours later at 6 a.m. to like load this U-Haul of supplies and like take off to this workshop. So it made for an interesting first time. I think that was actually my first airplane ride too, being a kid from the sticks. So, and we almost had to make an emergency landing because the pilot gets on. It's like, oh, by the way, we're almost out of gas if they don't let us land. And I'm like, this is how I go. So, yeah.
Well, in a ball, in a flame, and a ball, and blaze of glory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Go big or go home. Can't go home. Not enough gas.
So one of my favorite examples of when shit goes wrong is that I was working for Mercury Computer Systems, and we had this customer, and we're bringing software. You know, he needs new software. I'm bringing somebody in. It's a classified lab, so it's a black facility, which means, you know, if you go in, I mean, literally they had, and you would, you know, for those of you who don't know, Sandra has a not so well kept secret of, you know, that she is a birder. Is that the right way to say it? A person who likes birds is a birder. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
She's like, what? Well, I'm a who?
A what?
Jeez. I don't want to tell anything. Anyway, so you know how they have the little hoods they put on birds so they don't fly away. you know,
Hmm.
you know. So what they would have to do at this classified lab is they had these big rubber sheathing hoods that they would put over the computer so you couldn't see the computers because it was classified stuff, right? So for anybody to go into the skiff, which is the classified vault, they'd have to lock everything down, everything gets buttoned up. So Jim has got to go through Dr. Jim. I mean, he's a PhD. I'll leave his last name out, but Dr. Jim, great guy. And Dr. Jim says, John, it's going to work out great. Just ship the software, FedEx, and then you guys will show up. And then bada bing, bada boom, you'll install it and life will be good. It'll be good. We're going to be good. So we FedEx it to him. And of course, we get there. And if you've never been to a classified facility, I just have to say, don't go. It's a lot like waiting in line at Space Mountain, though there's no fun right at the end. You just wait. So we finally get in there and everything is covered. All of his people are, of course, they're on guard. And I said, Jim, where's the FedEx package? He goes, I don't know. Maybe they shipped it to you. I said, nope, shipped it to you. That was what we were told. He goes, well, can you check on it? So I have the air bill number and I call up FedEx and I say, hey, here's my number. And this is in the days when FedEx actually answered the phone. Don't try this today, kids. They don't answer the phone anymore. It just goes and goes and goes, and you never get to that person. Anyway, so I tell the person what it is, and they say, oh, by the way, that was delivered at 9:41 in the morning, and it was, Mr. Jenkins, signed for it. I said, okay, yeah, great. So I said, well, Jim, here it goes. Delivered here, 9:41, Mr. Jenkins. He goes, all right. Now the facility we're at is a big giant campus, lots of different buildings. And we go and we jump into this golf cart and Jim, well, let's just say Jim is wound a little bit too tight for this kind of bureaucracy. And we go hauling ass across the parking lot, Jim and I, while my guy is sitting there entertaining these people who none of them can work, by the way, because the lab is shut down. It isn't like, hey, go sit in the lobby, we'll go power back up. No, everything has been sealed, right? And, somebody signed off on it. So we drive over to the dock, and the dock is kind of reminiscent of that Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of warehouse look. And we go there, and here's three guys leaning against a counter talking to each other. And Jim is holding the yellow Post-it note. He's holding the yellow Post-it note. And he runs up and he goes, hey, wait a second, I'm here. I'm here to talk. I've got this. This package has been delivered. And they said, okay, we'll no worries. All you got to do is fill out a form. So they take a form and they literally take a clipboard. They put it on there. They hand him a pen, and Jim furiously fills this whole thing out. Gives them the tracking number, gives them all that stuff. I fill in any of the other blanks. Where did it come from? And the guy looks at it and he goes, looks complete. You need an initial there, sign there, good. Puts the clipboard back, puts the pen back. It's a multi-part form. He sits there and he takes a rubber pad and a rubber stamp, red ink, stamps it, boom, 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 inquiry, and closes all that and puts it back meticulously and puts it into an inbox, which is filled with forms, and goes back to his conversation. And Jim goes, you don't understand. We need that package. This thing is urgent. And the guy goes, puts his hand up and says, well, wait a second. You didn't say it was urgent. It's urgent. Brings the form back, takes a little rubber pad, takes a different rubber stamp, flips it open, stamps urgent on all copies, puts those back meticulously, and puts the form exactly where it was before. And Dr. Jim loses his shit, and these guys, I'm almost certain were Teamsters, looked at him and go, the guy said, what do you want me to do about it, buddy? I marked it urgent, didn't I? Now, we drive back over. Jim's got to let everybody get back to work. Ah. And I said, Jim, we're going to have them ship us the next version of that software out today. It's going to go to my office, and then that way I'll hand carry it in, which is really not what was supposed to happen, but because you're not supposed to be able to bring something into a classified lab, but we do it. Now, Jim eventually has, and I kid you not, a stroke in a few months. Now, he doesn't die. He doesn't lose much mobility. He didn't have feeling in a few fingers. But he says, I'm just wound too tight for this thing, and leaves and goes to a different company. Wind the clock forward. I don't know how many months. I still had a shared office, like a executive suite. And I'm sitting in my office, and the phone buzzes, and it says, hey, there's somebody who's calling from the customer, And I said, okay. And I pick it up, and they said, hi, this is Bob Jones from ABC Big Aerospace. And we have a package that's not deliverable, and we're trying to figure out what it is. And it's a FedEx. And I said, oh, is it this airbill number? And I read it. Now, by the way, this has got to be at least a year, maybe 18 months later. And I read it to him. He goes, yeah, how'd you know? I said, look at the date on it. And he goes, oh. And I said, he goes, well, what do I do with it? I said, whatever you want. He goes, oh, I can't take responsibility for it. So obviously it had fallen down, just like if you lose something behind the washer and it isn't until you move and you take it out and you go, yeah, there was my Dr. Seuss sock. I know, I always knew I had that one. Yeah. So that was my favorite story. And I actually tracked Dr. Jim down. That had been, several years later. And I said, you remember that? I told him the story, and he looked at me and he said, that's insane. I said, well, aren't you glad that they kept working at it till they found it? And I postscript to it I couldn't let the guy off the phone by saying, now there's a form there somewhere that was marked urgent. I want you to go back, because at the bottom of the form it said resolution of package, and I think you ought to sign that and fill that in, because we want to have closure on that. And the guy said a few things that I wouldn't say on this, because what he told me to do I don't think is anatomically possible, and said bullshit, and hung up the phone. So that was one of my favorite Murphy stories. Now, for those of you who are joining the Raging Verbalist for the first time, or maybe you've just stumbled upon this, first and foremost is that I wanted to point out a book that I am the co-author, co-conspirator, and writer of, which is Most Businesses Fail in the First 5 Minutes. It just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it, or 3 to 5 years to find your package at a big, giant facility. And go check it out. You can go to positiontowinbook.com, positiontowinbook.com. You can also go to the Facebook page, which is, Sandra, what is the Facebook page again?
Position to Win book. Most businesses fail in the first 5 minutes.
And that's the
go check it
Facebook
out.
group. That's the Facebook
the group. Yeah.
And then you go over there and you can put up questions, and Sandra will dutifully get those and be nice. And then, it might pop up on a Raging Verbalist. Also, you can go check out my latest adventure, which is turnaroundengine.com. That's all one word, turnaroundengine.com. And go check that out and find out what I think is the biggest opportunity that has happened in, entire career. I mean, it's just amazing what's going on because of the coronavirus. And if you want to learn how to make money in this process, go check that out. Now that we've kind of hit that backside of it, the back nine, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you one final Murphy kick you in the head kind of thing. Oftentimes when I'm talking to business owners, they're trying to figure out what they are going to do. And they have this wonderful plan, and this plan, they fall in love with it. And now a lot of people have said this over the years. You can attribute it to General Eisenhower if you want, but which is, no plan survives first engagement with the enemy or some facsimile thereof. Well, that's just essentially what Murphy does to all of your plans. Now, having said that, for any of you who say, well, that means I don't need to plan and I'll be okay, all I can tell you is without a plan, you have no prayer. And with a plan, you have at least a chance. So my suggestion is that you should plan this stuff carefully and execute it properly. And because of that, I can tell you that some businesses become significantly more successful, Amazon. Other businesses fail and nobody knows who they are or were. I can tell you I walked into a bookstore chain years ago. In fact, we were trying to consult with them. And as I was talking to them about things they could do to create better interaction inside of the retail store, and in fact, telling them about the menace that was Amazon, they basically looked at me and said, well, John, really, I don't know. People aren't going to want to do those kinds of things inside of a store. Well, slowly but surely, they went away until they're totally gone. All I can say is that, you need to always be thinking about how to build a better plan, how to execute on that plan, and always remember that in every single plan and every single thing is that Murphy forever and ever always rides for free. And if you do that, you have a prayer of getting out of this thing. Sandra, do you have any final fun thoughts of a Murphy thing that happened to you? Because I have one last final Murphy story for everybody. What do you have? You have one little Murphy something that happened to you? Putting her on the spot.
I'm not really sure. Most of it's travel related where things just go completely awry. And the show must go on. You just have to continue. Continue your journey as best you can.
Keep a smile on your face. So
That's right.
I'll finish up with one of those amazing things that you just can't make up. And that is, I was on, and this was the worst flight I've ever been on in my life. And the worst flight I've ever been on in my life is that I was the evangelist for high-tech startup out of MIT. And we left Newark on our way to Boston. It is at most an hour flight, usually less. It is winter. And we get on this, and I'm flying on a semi-professional airline called Continental. And we take off, and we head up. And as we're flying up there, the pilot comes on, says, well, there's going to be a little weather. It's going to be choppy. But, Logan Airport in Boston is opening and closing. We'll get a window. We'll land. We'll be in good shape. So don't worry about it. We're going to be in good shape. So we get out there, and now the beauty of the Boston or New York to Boston, Boston to New York, that shuttle is that half of the plane is usually New Yorkers and half are Bostonians, and two more mellow groups of people you're not going to meet. Right now, it could be worse. It could all be from Philly, but I can't. I digress. And I have friends in Philly, but they understand. So these people are not happy that we're sitting there. And now the realization hits us, of course, is that, the weather seems to be getting worse. And we're circling and we're out there, just like Sandra was circling. Well, we're out there circling. And the pilot comes on and he tells us the story. And, now it's becoming a travel log. And for full effect, one of the restrooms has now overflowed and they've now locked it off. Nothing better than having that happen on a flight. So we're over the Atlantic somewhere in some holding pattern, and the pilot comes on and says, well, here's the good news and the bad news. And there's not a lot of good news. We're going to fly back south, but right now, Newark, LaGuardia, Kennedy are all closed. The only thing open on the East Coast right now, Philly is closed, is Dulles, and we don't have enough fuel to make it to Dulles. Now, I don't know if you've ever looked at a map, but Washington, D.C. is a long way from Boston. And what they did is they said, but here's the problem. We've been flying around long enough that we can't make it till Dulles, so we have to go land and get gas, and we're going to go get fuel in Albany, New York. Now, there's a good news and a bad news. That one, will make it to Albany, and it's clear we can land. Two is that we have no landing rights in Albany, so we really got to work a way to get the fuel. So, I mean, I'm thinking they're going to like pass a hat, take a collection, everybody toss in a credit card, you know. All right, I'll put in $80 plus tip or something, I don't know. And since it is a 727, and for those of you who have of historic significance who want to go look it up, it was, you know, that's the plane that D.B. Cooper jumped out of because it has a set of stairs at the butt end of the plane to land anywhere and get off of the plane. So we land in Albany, and the guy puts it down, and it is raining. It is nasty. It is not pretty. And he walks down the aisle. The captain has his hat, has a little, you know, has a little shower cap on top of his hat. Looks really cool, you know. I mean, but I guess he's got to keep the cap from getting wet. He's got his slicker and he's got a flashlight, and he literally walks out and walks around the runway to the tower, wherever the hell he's got to go to get gas, you know, put it on the shell card or something. And we refuel the plane. But of course, that takes extra time, and we figure that out. And we get it back on, and he goes, the good news is that since we've had to do this, Boston has been opening and closing, so we're going to go back to Boston. Yay! And we take off. And we're circling, and we're circling, and we're circling. And I am up by the back window, and I look out the little portal, and as we're flying along, I see the World Trade Center, because this is before 9/11. And I went, oh my God, we're over New York. And I walked back, and Doug, who was sitting next to me, who he and I worked together, I said, Doug, do you have your cell phone? He goes, yep, have it right here. I said, when we land, I need you to call National Car Rental, which is where we had to rent cars from for this company, and get a car in Newark, because we need to rent a car and drive it to Boston because we know one-way rental. He goes, but no, the guy's telling us we're around Boston. 45 minutes later, the pilot comes on and says, prepare the cabin for arrival. Everybody goes, yay! And I kid you not, because this is a semi-professional airline. As we touch the runway, he goes, we were unable to land in Boston. We are now back in Newark. Which, of course, the New Yorkers and the Bostonians, in their mellow, zen, Dalai Lama, what the fuck is going on? That kind of thing, you know. And they're all wearing nice clothes, but they're swearing like they're from, you know, Brooklyn or the Bronx or something. So away it goes, and we land. And as we land, Doug gets on the phone, and he gets a hold of National. And he scores a rental car. And we get off. And of course, at Continental, they said, hey, we're taking care of you. We've chartered buses to take you from Newark to Boston. Do not fear. And I said, look, I want my tickets back. I want Doug's ticket back. I want my luggage. It was an act of God, so you don't owe me any money, but I can turn this ticket back in because that's the way the gig works. And I do that, and we're assembling it while Doug is going to get the car. And there is a woman there. Again, I was, you know, Doug is a little older than me. You know, he's like 45, and I'm 40, and, you know, all that stuff. And I'm sitting there, and here's this woman. And I said to her, hey, we're renting a car. We're driving to Boston. If you want to come with us, just toss your stuff in. And she loses her shit and starts crying and says, how do I know that I can trust you guys or something could happen to us? And, you know, I mean, and I said, you have cracked the code. I'm losing my shit. You've cracked the code. We have set this whole thing up to take advantage of you and do something heinous. Come on. You know, we're computer salespeople, and we're stuck in a damn rental car in the winter driving to Boston because I don't miss meetings. There's a meeting in the morning. So she says, I'm not doing it. I said, well, I understand. I respect it. Doug pulls up, tosses stuff in. And we find out from some of the other passengers who kind of said, hey, we'll find out who makes it there first, that the bus that these semi-pros hired, one of the buses broke down on the Connecticut Turnpike, had no radio, wasn't legal to drive through because they didn't have the permit to drive through Connecticut. And the Connecticut State Patrol stopped, told them that they weren't legal to drive in there, gave them a ticket, and it was because of the passengers that called and got a tow truck out there. And we, of course, drove to Boston. So Murphy, and by the way, I did make my meeting. A little tired, a little worse for wear. But all I can tell you is that that is a perfect example of every time I would look back in the back seat of that Buick LeSabre four-door, I would just imagine that there was Murphy sitting back there, cigar in his mouth, an adult beverage, laughing his ass off at us and what we were trying to do. That is my worst travel trip ever, because it was Newark to Newark in 7.5 hours of joy. They ran out of water, they ran out of liquor, they ran out of soda, and the toilet had stopped up. Nothing is better than that. All right. Well, on that happy note, Sandra, thank you for working through this. I hope your internet becomes stable.
Well, I got a notification saying it was unstable, so this is where we are now.
Murphy is always there.
There you go.
Chomping a cigar, drinking an adult beverage, laughing
That's
his
right.
ass off. And with that, I just want to thank everybody who's out there who's joined me and the lovely Sandra on Raging Verbalist number 44 minus 1/8. So that would make it 43 7/8. And you have just endured, as we did, Raging Verbalist. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Ping us, do some stuff, have some fun. But remember, Murphy's always out there, always riding for free, and will definitely kick your ass.